Well, in the ancient ruins of Delphi, Greece, where people once sought the voice of the gods, I reflect this morning on the recently resolved case in Delphi, Indiana. Richard Allen has been found guilty of murdering Abigail Williams and Liberty German. Still, many claim that this guy was framed. So join me as we explore what was proven in court, what was whispered in myth, and why the ancient god of deception, Dolos, might still be whispering today. Well, hey, folks, welcome to Profiling Evil. I'm really glad you're here. And before we dive into this discussion, do me a quick favor. Hit that like and subscribe button over here if you haven't already done so, and please make sure that you've got your notifications turned on so that you don't miss a single update. Anytime we drop new content, you're going to get the information. And please share us with your friends. That's how we grow this amazing community of Profiling Evil, because here at Profiling Evil, we try to go a little bit beyond the headlines. We try to uncover some of the criminal behavior, the investigative strategies, and the hidden patterns that offer us a glimpse into criminals. I'm filming here in Delphi, Greece, where people once climbed these mountains in search of answers from the gods. They came here to consult the oracle of Apollo, to ask the unanswerable questions, to plead for justice, to seek clarity when life became murky. You can almost feel the desperation still hanging in the air here. And yet, as I walk around this early morning looking at the columns in Apollo's temple or looking down in this valley of Phycos behind me, my thoughts are thousands of miles away. Delphi, Indiana, where in 2017, two young girls, Abigail Williams and Liberty German, went for a hike and never came home. In that case, gripped the nation. It haunted families. It consumed the true crime community. But now in 2025, it's reached what many consider a final chapter. Richard Allen has been found guilty in a court of law. Now, not everybody believes that the verdict represents justice in this case. And that tension has created the divide between what the court declared and what some people still feel. And that's exactly what I want to explore with you today. Because as I walk these very grounds where ancient people search for divine truth, I can't help but wonder if we're kind of searching in the same way. Only now it's podcasts instead of prophets, trial transcripts instead of temple smoke, and forensic evidence instead of oracles. So let's go back to the moment that February of 2017 that we know about. Abby and Libby were out of school and they decided to go for a walk along the Monon High Bridge. That's a popular spot, a scenic, peaceful place. They were dropped off around 1:30 in the afternoon, and by the evening, when they didn't return, fears started setting in. But by the next day, their bodies were found in a wooded area not far from the bridge. Now, what made this case even more chilling was what Libby left behind, a video on her mobile phone. Now, just a few seconds of grainy footage, but it was of a man approaching, a quiet command, guys, down the hill. Then the voice became a haunting soundtrack in the months and years that followed. It was played over and over again, seared into the collective memory of everybody about this case and what it meant to us. For 5 long years, the case appeared cold, but behind the scenes, investigators were placing things together. Then, in late 2022, they arrested Richard Allen, a man that lived in Delphi and worked at the local CVS. Now, Allen had already told police that he'd been on the trail that day. He was watching fish. He said that he didn't see anybody, but the investigators weren't convinced. And soon, pieces started falling into place. And among the evidence presented at a trial was a 40 caliber unspent bullet that was found beneath one of the girls' bodies. That bullet, through forensic analysis, was linked back to a handgun that Richard Allen owned, a semi automatic weapon that he said never left his possession. No one else had the gun, only this guy. And according to forensic examiners in court, a court of law, the jury believed it. And they believed that it could only come from Richard Allen's weapon. That detail alone raised serious questions in his defense. And then came those jailhouse recordings. Now, these weren't interrogations. There were no pressure tactics here. There were no detectives even sitting in the room. These were phone calls to his wife and his mother, personal, private moments that, unknown to him, apparently he didn't read the sign, were recorded. And in those calls, Richard Allen confessed, not once, not twice, but more than 60 times. Let that sink in for a moment. Now, in my decades of law enforcement, I've seen how suspects behave under pressure. I know that there's lots of psychological reasons going on here, but what people say when they think nobody else is listening, that's usually where you find the truth. That's where guilt or innocence shows itself. Allen repeatedly had unsolicited confessions that were powerful. Yeah, they were messy, they were emotional, and they were damning. Some argue that because the conditions he was in caused that or didn't cause it, I don't know, but they came. More than 60 of them. And yet, even after a guilty verdict, a large and passionate group of people continue to believe that Richard Allen was framed. They believe that the real killers are a group of Odinists, adherents to a Norse pagan belief system, who performed ritualistic sacrifices deep in Indiana's woods and then conspired to pin these crimes on Allen. Now, I've spent a good portion of my career studying and investigating ritual crime. I've seen what it looks like. Things like when the symbolic meanings assigned to violent acts. When killers try to spiritualize their depravity, and yes, there were elements of that in the Delphi crime scene that caught my eye. The posing of the victims, for one, the twigs placed on them. These kinds of things suggest disorganization, a fantasy that unraveled in the aftermath of emotional chaos. But what I didn't see is the kind of precision or consistency that you'd expect from an organized group performing a ritual. Still, the Odinist theory caught fire. It claimed the murders were sacrificial, that strange symbols were carved into trees, and that the entire crime scene bore the marks of cultic activity. The defense launched into this theory and they gave it oxygen. But for this theory to hold any water, in my opinion, we'd have to believe something really extraordinary. That this group of Odinists orchestrated a scenario in which Allen would place himself at the crime scene, and that they somehow compelled him without contact to confess again and again. Not to the police, may you know, but to his own family. That's just a lot to swallow for me. And yeah, I understand there were guards in the prison that might have been in question. And yet it's a story that people are clinging to because myths are seductive. They offer meaning when facts are incomplete, a certainty when emotions run high. And that's where I want to bring you back to this place, Delphi, Greece. And the ancient god who I swear has been whispering in my ear the entire time I walk these trails around here, the god of Dolos. The ancient Greeks believed in many different gods. And here in Delphi, they came to seek wisdom from Apollo, the god of light and truth, the god of prophecy. But behind Apollo, always just out of sight, lurked Dolos, the god of deception, the god of craft and guile. Dolos wasn't just a brute force or a driving justice god. No, Dolos played the long game. This is a guy who dealt in half truths, illusions, and persuasive lies. He was the forger, the mimic, the artist of deceit. His gift wasn't to destroy truth, it wasn't to distort it. It was just enough to sound believable. just enough to make you question the light and turn toward the shadows. He didn't need a sword, he didn't need a whisper, and he was very good at all of it. And isn't that kind of what we're dealing with here? Now, that's why Dolos comes to mind when I see certain narratives gaining traction in the Delphi case. Hear from Delphi. When recorded jailhouse confessions made freely to family members are reframed as manipulation, it seems a little deceitful to me. When physical evidence that held up in court is dismissed by a group of people as convenient plantings, seems as a little bit questionable. When a horrific act of violence is reshaped into a sprawling, exotic conspiracy that involves ancient symbols and secret societies, this is the place where Dolos, deceit, it reigns. And that's exactly what profiling evil tries to stand against. My mission, I think our mission at Profiling Evil, is to push back against the fog of Dolos. We work to expose deception, to strip away sensationalism, and to walk steadily toward truth. Not easy truth at time, not the viral kinds of truth that are out there, but the kind of truth that holds up under scrutiny. At Profiling Evil, we don't chase myths. We chase behavioral clues, and we compare that with the other forms of evidence, criminal patterns, the facts, the things that stick around when everything else falls apart. So when I think about that ancient god of Dolos here in Delphi, Greece, this clever god who thrived in confusion, I'm reminded of why the work matters. This work that we're doing here, why we have to ask hard questions, why we must be willing to sit in the discomfort of truth rather than reach for the comfort of fiction. Because justice doesn't come from whispers, it comes from proof, evidence, acceptable in a court of law. Now, I say this with care because I am not trying to mock those who believe differently. Some of them are my friends, some are former colleagues, and some of them are people who care deeply about justice. But when we start to prefer myths over facts, when we let the god of Dolos guide our thinking, when we risk trading reality for something more palatable, things that explain the unthinkable in ways that maybe feel safer, we're stepping onto a slippery slope. But justice doesn't come from feelings, it comes from evidence, from the messy, uncomfortable, clinical truth that sometimes monsters aren't hiding in the woods. They're living right here in the towns that we live in. They're working at the local CVS pharmacy, and they're walking the same Mononhigh Trail as the victims. Now, a jury weighed all that evidence. They listened to those recordings. They heard from the experts, and they found that Richard Allen was guilty of murdering Abigail Williams and Liberty German. But does that mean this story's over? Not by a long shot, as is being proven out. It's not over for the families that have to continue to listen to this malarkey. It's not over for the community or anybody that's still captivated by the whispers of Dolos. And hopefully, now convicted killer Richard Allen, it's not over for him. But it does mean that we have a foundation to stand upon, one that's built not on smoke or symbols or mythology, but something that can be proven. So I want to know what you think. I mean, is this a case of justice finally done? Or is Dolos still at work, bending the truth just enough to leave us all a little bit uncertain? So let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. I'd really love to hear what you think, but please let's keep this one kind, keep it thoughtful, and please keep it anchored in respect. Respect for Abby and Libby and their families. And from Delphi, Greece to the people interested in Delphi, Indiana, That's all for today, but I hope you'll drop your comments down below. Again, I'd love to hear your perspective, and don't be shy about weighing in on the conversations of other people. Thanks so much for watching Profiling Evil. I really do appreciate your support. I really appreciate your support. Make sure you're following us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. And if you like audio podcasts, make sure you're checking out Profiling Evil's audio podcasts on your favorite podcast platform. And now, if you want a little more information, go over to profilingevil.com and check out our story maps and our missing persons and homicides map and all other kinds of content. And if you're into true crime books, make sure you're checking out my book, Deceived, an investigative memoir of the Zion Society cult. This is the story of the most disturbing cult investigated in American history, in my opinion. Or read She Knew No Fear, the century-old murder mystery of my great-great-grandmother who was murdered, shot, and killed in 1891 at a town celebration. You'll read about how I solved that murder more than 130 years later. And you can order either thing if you're living in the United States with free shipping, and I'll autograph that thing. Or you can get them worldwide on Amazon. Hey, thanks again for being part of the Profiling Evil community. From the ruins of Delphi, Greece, to the echoes of Indiana. We'll see you soon at the next crime scene.